Hello, and welcome to another episode of Radically Embody Love Podcast. This is Nasrin Barbic with my co-host Jessica Falcon, and today we have a special guest, Judie Hurtado. She's a mystic and trusted spiritual advisor with over 40 years of personal and professional experience. She has extensive training and certification in various healing modalities, such as hypnosis, intuitive counseling, and she's also a certified ordained minister. She's also a Reiki Master. One of her unique talents is her ability to see and hear things that her clients may not be aware of. She can then support them in transforming the thoughts and beliefs that are keeping them feeling stuck and trapped. She has supported thousands of clients, and her client referred to her as their secret weapon. I love that. So welcome, Judie. We are very excited to have you here. And I would love to know a little bit more about your own journey, how you got here, and what inspired you to do what you do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Daz. Thank you, Jessica, for having me here. I'm so excited to connect with you and to connect with your audience and everybody who's listening. So what started my journey? Let's see. I guess like maybe most of us, it's a little interesting and complicated, or maybe not, right? That's like the story. It's just a story that I'm telling myself. So here, as I'm speaking, I'm becoming very aware of the power and my intention behind my words. So as a little girl, as far as I can remember, I was able to see things and know things that perhaps other people weren't seeing or hearing. I believe this gift came from my mother, because my mother had this gift, but it wasn't something that we ever talked about. So she would just say things and they would manifest, they would happen. She would make predictions. And I remember I was around like 7 or 8. My mother was talking to my father and she shared that she was seeing this like dark shadow in a certain room of the house. And I said, I'm seeing it too. Like I just remember being so shocked. I'm like, me too. And my father was like, oh, like you're just, not that he didn't say you're making it up, but sort of like, come on, you're just like saying what your mom is saying. But that was true. I did see it. And I was seeing this. And then when I was 11 and a half years old, right, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is a chronic condition. At this point, there isn't any cure, something I live with. And when that happened, I had a premonition when I was 10 that something was going to happen to me medically. And I even looked in a medical encyclopedia that my parents had. I used to love reading the encyclopedia. So I had a feeling something was going to happen. When it finally happened, I think that was also a huge catalyst into this healing journey, because remember thinking, did I create this because I was thinking about this? Or did I do something I thought I was, a big part of me felt like I was being punished for something I did. I knew that I was a good little girl, so something I did in a past life. And my mother was like, what are you talking about? These were not karma, and all these words were not something that was spoken about in my household. And so those experiences really led me to this path where I started to read books like Creative Visualization and The Power of Positive Thinking, and When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And that's how my path opened. Now, I did work in corporate America. I worked in New York City. I was in advertising. I was in marketing. At that point, did not feel like I had any special gifts. But I remember just telling my coworkers, I would say things and they would happen, and then it would manifest. And they were like, what, Judith? And I used to go by Judith. That's like my professional name, Judith. And they're like, Judith, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. Like, I really was like, I don't know. I didn't feel like I wasn't aware of that. But I was studying tarot. I was practicing yoga, different teachers. People would tell me I had a gift. I didn't believe it. And then here I am now. So that's a shortened version of it.
There's so many ways we could take this conversation. There's so much that you shared that I'd love to dive into further, around being so young and just having this remembrance at such a young age of the magical world we live in, and that it's not just 3D, right? It's not just physical. And you inherently knew this as a young child and started to tap into that. And it sounds as if your mother was somewhat supportive of that, even though she didn't really know all the terminology that you're using. Is that true? Or did you feel like you struggled to really trust and honor what you knew inside?
Yeah, Jessica, I struggled. I felt alone. I always felt that I was different. And that's very layered for all different reasons. And like with my mom, so my mom passed away when I was 28. So it's not a conversation, that I could have with her in the 3D form. I don't remember her. She didn't acknowledge her own gift. So I remember one time my mother was from Spain, and we were visiting Spain, and we had this big family dinner, and one of my uncles was sitting across, and then I gave my mom the salt. My mom used the salt. And my uncle was like, okay, stop. He goes, I need to know. He goes, I've been watching you, and your mom didn't say anything about wanting the salt. Why did you give her the salt? And I was like, well, she wanted the salt. Like, I knew. And it was like, oh, and my mom kind of just like changed the subject. And so but we never spoke about it. Like with I have 2 daughters now, and they grew up hearing me talk about this stuff and seeing crystals all around the house and like my oracle cards. And they know that I worked in corporate America and I did certain things, and now I'm doing this work. So it's something like I'm always teaching them, trust your intuition. You know the truth. If something doesn't feel good, don't just say yes because you want to go along with the crowd. Say no, like listen to your intuition. I think my mom she did the best that she could. I think at that time it was still considered a little, maybe having that gift was a little strange. And I think she also just she wasn't aware. I really think she wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, and
Even though like my family knew, like my dad was like, oh, there she goes again. But it wasn't like, oh, wow. It was more like, I don't know. It wasn't looked in a positive way from my memory anyway.
Yeah, I think that's so common. And I resonate with that myself. It wasn't until I heard it from few people, even my own shaman, say, you're a healer. And I didn't even know what that meant. I mean, I knew certain things that, I was always told that I have a kind hand, because when I would put my hands in area that people have pain, it would ease their pain. But it was so natural to me. And that's the thing, things that are naturally come to you. You don't think about it twice. That is a gift. That is something different. And so when and how did you trust that and became empowered to actually not only embody your gift, but also serve with that gift?
Yeah. So what happened was I worked in corporate America. Then I stayed home with my daughters. And as they got a little bit older, I started studying Reiki, and I studied with different teachers, started taking different classes. And it became a yoga teacher. It really was when I was studying with I think it was like my second or third Reiki teacher. And she invited us to start documenting our sessions. And I never imagined ever I was going to lay my hands on other people. I studied Reiki to keep my body, myself healthy, and to keep my family healthy. So I was just laying my hands on them. So now I was like, okay, I want to become, it's like, if you want to become a Reiki master, this was her process. So I told my friends, listen, I'm studying to become a Reiki master. Can you be my guinea pig? And they were like, sure. And I started laying my hands and I started doing that. That's really when my intuitive gifts opened up. And I started to see, I was like, I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing this. And when you were 7, and then I'm seeing, and they were like shocked. Like, how did you know this? I'm like, and sometimes I would see things I didn't even want to see, like that's why now I really don't have friends as my clients, because I was like, some things I just don't want to know. Right. Because then I see you, anyway. And they really, it was really them, like my friends were like, Judie, you have a gift, like you need to do this, you need to do this. So I started facilitating sessions for my friends, and then they told their friends, and then it kind of just evolved that way. It was never my intention to have a spiritual business or to be a soul entrepreneur. I was a health and wellness freelance writer. So I had like, different things as my children got older. I was a health and wellness writer. And one of my editors said, Judie, do you know that every time you send us a pitch, it's always about like mental health and physical health? And like, she's like, can I give you a column called Spiritual Seeker? And I was like, oh my gosh. So other people really recognize things. I didn't have so much clarity. And then I said, you're right. I really am interested in all this. And the kind of the path just evolved as I took step by step.
I really want to back up this conversation a little bit, because you started studying Reiki and you became a master, and at first you were hesitant, it sounds like, to really serve globally in this way as you do now. But at the beginning you were just wanting to do this for yourself and your family, which is beautiful. And also the initial part of the conversation around, trusting yourself at a young age, and your mom's kind of reticence to really acknowledge her own gifts. I want to step back into that before we go further into what you're doing now, because I find that it's so common that there's fear of these types of intuitive gifts. And I really want to hone in on this for our listeners, that the reason we often don't trust, right, the invisible realm and the gifts to see energy and hear and feel these things is because it has been demonized for so long. And we've been told, that, well, you're just a witch, or it's devil work, it's evil. And I know for me, coming into my own gifts and path, I've had to do so much work to clear the belief that I'm evil for what I do, the belief that I'm demonic for having these powers. And so I'd really love to spend a little bit of time on that, because I imagine that you had to face that as well coming into this.
Yes, 100%. You use the word witch, and I prefer bruja, right, for my lineage, but there is something called like the witch wound. And that I do have many clients who are spiritual entrepreneurs, or who are almost like, it's like they're tiptoeing, like to embracing their gifts. And I went through this process as well, where there is a lot of fear. And some of it, and the fear still exists in 2023. There's still people who are like I've had people physically like move away from me when I begin talking about my work, like literally move away. And it was women, right? So it's not even like, let's just say men, like, oh, I don't know what she's talking about. And so there is still fear. And I think that, so to me, a witch is a woman who is powerful AF, right? Like, who knows her power, who's able to either heal with her hands or herbs or medicine or mindset or whatever it might be. And that scares people. That divine feminine energy, that Shakti energy. We all have Shakti. We all have, we have male and female. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but there is still this hiding, I call it in the spiritual closet. Not wanting to say, like Nancy Reagan had an astrologer. Oh my gosh, back in the day, like, people look down upon that. And the society has, I think things have changed. People are getting more open and more comfortable. With me going back to like just talking about my own process, it was, like I said, it's like kind of appealing and letting go and releasing and doing a lot of inner work. So that's why it took me, I studied with different teachers. It took me about 3 years before my first Reiki attunement, before becoming a Reiki master, because I like to go in really deep. I like to study the work. I like to embody the work. Like, I want to feel it. I want to know it before saying, oh, let me go around healing you. It's like, no, let me heal myself. So it might sound a little selfish. I wanted to heal myself and keep my family happy and healthy. But if I'm not doing the work, how can I serve others? Like, I'm not coming from that place. That's how I have maybe a little high standards for myself, you know.
Well, that's
That
the way it's supposed to be, right? I mean, we need to embody it ourselves to be able to fully from that place. And that reminds me of the story. I don't know if it was the story from Gandhi or another spiritual, but because I heard two versions. One said it was Gandhi, that a mother goes to him and bring his son, and he said, my son is unhealthy, overweight, I'm worried about it, but I can't convince him to stop eating sugar. Would you please, he loves you, he listens to you, would you please talk to him and ask him to, advise him regarding this? And the Gandhi said, okay, go come back a week from now. And the mother said, okay, maybe he has his reason. He takes the son back, bring him in a week. And then he says, the Gandhi said, son, it's not good to eat sugar. It's not good for your health. I'm going to ask you to try it and stop. And that's it. And the mother is a little bit puzzled. It's like, well, may I ask you, why did you ask me to come back a week after while you just, And I said, because I was consuming sugar at that point myself. I wanted to experience it and see the benefit before I can advise someone, right? So there is so much to say about that. And unfortunately, I believe there are a lot in online world that advise people without really themselves embodying. And so I appreciate you saying that, that you saw the benefit of, and the other thing is we want to benefit as much as we, want to help others from that. So a part of that is embodying what we actually preach regarding that, right? So, and so now that you have embodied, and I have listened to you often, that there is that confidence and knowing when you talk. And it sounds to me that you have trusted that knowing and you have embodied as you teach. And how, when you work with people who come to you, try to transfer that knowledge. And we talked about fear. I'm very familiar with that. I had that fear at the beginning. Like there was this knowing, but there was this fear of embodying it. Because yeah, it's true that even now, some people, is looked upon something woo-woo, they call it, right? But it's because we all have fear of unknown or unseen, and trusting that and embody that and acting from that is a little bit, unfamiliar to us. But how do you go about and, helping the clients that come to you?
Sure. Now, so one thing I want to be clear about is that I still have fear. Okay. So I'm not always 100% confident. I call it like the inner bully, right? So the inner bully, that voice is very, very loud and active in my life. So I just want you guys to know, everybody who's listening, that bully is still there. And that bully will say, like, you don't know enough. And, even Nasrin, when you were reading my bio, and like, of course, I did not give you every single certification. Like, I have 1,085,000 plus certifications and modalities. And one reason is like, yes, I love the work and I like to get really deep and study with different teachers. But also the inner bully was like, you don't know enough. You need to do more. You need to do more. You need to do more. So once I become aware of that, I've been able to stop, because I'm like, oh, that's the whole, I think awareness, right? Also, with age comes wisdom. So I'm, I think with having experience getting older, and then also speaking and connecting with other teachers who are older than myself, just knowing that they also have this. I know we hear about the imposter syndrome. That's like pretty common. But just realizing that, guess what? Like, even though people, like you said, like people think, oh, I'm so confident, and I am, because I've had a lot of experience and my clients have had amazing results. And I still have those doubts and those fears and hear those voices. So I don't know if that ever goes away. It's just part of it. I just accepted it. I listen. Sometimes I listen and say, maybe I should read this book, or maybe this class will help me. But otherwise, most times, like, no, it's not true. But it is. I have studied with different teachers, and I think that has helped me as well, because like so I'm now serving as an anchor to my clients, or as a spiritual advisor. So it helps them. It's just, I think, time and practice and really, and then doing the steps in terms of like meditation, self-inquiry, journaling, yoga, whatever, there's so many different ways to do self-inquiry and to get to that base of knowledge, and looking at the wounds, like the shadow, those voices that say, it's too woo, or no one's going to like you. Because there is that's also that fear of that witch wound, like you're going to be ostracized, because we were ostracized, we were killed. If you're in this world, I'm like, if you're talking to me, if you're listening to this podcast, you are a witch. I would almost say 100%. There's something about you that's drawn to this energy. And the more you lean into it, I feel like the more it's the power grows. It's about your power.
And also what I hear you saying about the power, Judie, is that part of the power is not letting the fear have power over you. And it's not that the fear goes away, because we live right in a culture where it's still quite predominant. Mm-hmm. And the fear is in a way, right, trying to protect us. Like the fear is trying to protect us from being killed again. And so when we want to speak a deep truth, a deep sacred truth that recognizes that the world is not purely 3D, the ego mind goes, yeah, but if you say that, you'll be killed again, right? So it's trying to protect us. But unfortunately, the fear is also rooted in the past, not the present. And it's also rooted in, for me, what I've seen is the fear is usually rooted in the denial of my divine self, the divinity that I am. And it's a process of, coming out of just the pure, like we get out of fear over time. This is a spiraling, very deep journey, but we get out of fear by coming out of just the pure 3D human self and anchoring deeper and deeper into the soul divine self. And the soul divine self, at its purest essence, knows no fear. It is the pure divine light love. But we're in the middle of this collective transition from just the pure, right, like 3D human self back into the divine collective consciousness. And that's a massive journey this whole collective planet is on. And so I'm curious if you can shed a little more light for the listeners on that transition from the 3D into this more soulful way of living and trusting yourself. Mm-hmm. Though it also sounds like you knew, like, at such a young age, but really claiming it and owning it.
Yeah. I mean, Jessica, like I knew at a young age, but I didn't know. Like I knew I could see things and hear things, but I didn't know that was like, not that it's special, but that not everybody can see that or hear that. But it also did make me feel a little different, because I could just tell in conversations, like sometimes people didn't understand what I was coming from. So there was that loneliness and feeling alone. The word, as you were speaking, I keep on hearing and seeing, so I'm just going to share it. Discernment. So being discerning, and that could, such an interesting word. So what is that like to me, as I'm thinking about your question, is that being discerning on who you open up to, because not everybody's ready to hear this information. Listening to your intuition, like that little nudge, like maybe she is someone I can trust. Maybe I do want to work with this person. Maybe I don't want to work with this person. And taking baby steps, right? Some people want to take a huge leap of faith, and that's maybe that's their soul path. So I would say, yes, go for it if that feels good to you. I think a big part of the work that I do is helping my clients and my community. I do one-on-one work. I work with groups. I do blessings. It's like, I want everyone to feel safe. So that's like the opposite of fear, right? So if you can feel safe in your body, right? I would say really feel safe in your body, however that feels to you. Like, what that means, like somatic work, it means meditation, it means, moving, dancing. It calms the nervous system. And when your parasympathetic nervous system is calm and relaxed, then healing can take place. So I like to focus a lot on the person, because then if you can heal, I really believe, and this is a vow that I took on my work from a shaman many years ago. When you work with me, specifically, I can't speak for all intuitives or healers, I feel that you not only heal yourself, but you also heal past generations and you heal future generations. So everyone benefits, and then people around you also benefit. So if your clients, if your listeners are curious about it, it's like, okay, I always say, ask spirit, ask your own soul. Say, I'm curious in learning more about what my power is, or how to feel safe in my body, or how to listen to my intuition, or how to open up like my third eye. Send me the best person who can support me on this journey. If there's a person, if there's a class, if there's a book, send it to me. And I always say, make it so clear and obvious that I can't miss. I always put that disclaimer in there. Make it so clear and obvious, I cannot miss. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I like to speak my intentions out loud, my prayers, I journal, and then I keep my eyes open to see what catches my attention. And I'm like, oh, okay, someone will pop in, maybe on Instagram or an email, or I will casually overhear a conversation. I'll say, oh, like sometimes I'm like, oh, like what are you talking about? What's that book? Did you just mention a book? Like, I'm sorry, I can't hear, I just overheard you mention a book. Let me write that down. And so everything is, I believe, Einstein said that quote, like, everything is a miracle if you choose to believe it to be. So I hope that answers your question.
I love what you said, because in my experience, it always has been true that when I set the intention out there and ask for help, especially, and say, I just need someone to guide me through this process. It has never failed that I have had a teacher come my way, a book come my way unexpectedly. And I truly, from my own experience, can resonate with what you said.
Yeah.
When we are clear that we do it by setting intention and asking you shall receive, right? There's a book by that name. And just really put it out there and, have that conversation with whatever you believe, your spirit, the higher self. And always in my own experience, I have received the answer that I've been seeking, but I need to be very clear, as you mentioned, right? Just ask for it, what you need, what guidance you need, and then be open to receive. That's the other part of it. Be open to receive, because it might show up in unexpected way, not what you expected, not even in a human form. It's a book, it's just the intuitive knowing, is something that you might not expect, but just be open to receive however it might come your way. So I love what you said. And also know that I think recently you learned about hypnosis and became certified. How do you think that benefits, and what is that work entail?
Oh gosh, I love anything to do with the mind. And that's something that did start when I was young, when I was diagnosed with type 1, as I mentioned, type 1 diabetes when I was 11. And even before then, I used to write letters to God, like letters to my soul, letters to God. And with hypnosis, when I took this training, I've taken, I guess, as I mentioned, I've taken many trainings, many certifications. I kind of felt like, oh, I know a lot. I've taken a lot of subconscious mind work. And when I initially first learned, became deeper in my wisdom of the subconscious mind, I was like, oh, that's like the missing key. Because like conscious mind, we're talking, but there's so much that we don't know that's running the show. So we all have these like limiting beliefs and blind spots. And it's not a bad thing. It keeps us alive. So we know how to cross the street. We're not constantly learning how to cross the street or constantly learning how to tie our shoes. But when I discovered the power and the importance of the subconscious mind, that's when I was like so much more open. And in terms of hypnosis, it's like it's yet another way to access a part of us that we all have and plant the seed. So I talk a lot about planting seeds. So planting seeds and planting intentions. And when we plant it in the subconscious mind, that's what it's like, it takes root and you feel safe. The body needs to feel safe and supported for that to happen. And then you're like, oh, then you suddenly are able to make the changes that you wanted that were before you perhaps were feeling stuck. Like my clients will come in, I'm feeling stuck, or I'm feeling trapped, or I keep on finding myself in the same situation over and over again, or I want to do this and I want to do that, and I'm not doing it. Self-procrastination. Sometimes it's, self-sabotage. So hypnosis is just another way to clear that out. And so you can move forward in the direction that you want.
It's so important, the subconscious mind, as you were saying, because it directs, was it Bruce Lipton that said 95% of our behavior is often directed by the subconscious mind, which is underneath the level of consciousness. For those who aren't quite sure what the subconscious mind is, it's the part of us that is always operating and acting without that conscious awareness, that conscious choice. And so the more we can go into the subconscious in the body and do this work to bring it to light, bring it to awareness, then we can come deeper into that power and choice, because we're not choosing, at least not consciously, right? If the subconscious mind is ruling us.
Right.
And around the subconscious, I'd love to tie this into the initial conversation around the soul, right? And the karma and the past lives, because how I see it is that the subconscious can include, right, the imprints of past lives and the soul imprints. And so when we start to go into the body, we access that intergenerational trauma, we access the subconscious beliefs we've taken from this life, from this current culture, but also what our soul has experienced in past lives. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that and how that ties into the soul's unique journey.
Yes, thank you. Let's see what there's so much that wants to come through. An interesting concept about past life, if you also believe in parallel lives. So time isn't linear. And I recently, one of the processes that I do them with groups. They're timeline jumps. And a timeline jump is, the way that I facilitate is like, you jump into the future. So you meet a future self and you become your future self. Like, that's the intention. Now, in the process, who knows what's going to happen? So I did a group, and one of my clients reached out later. I always offer support, post jump support, because there's something that could be like a little wobble. And she connected with a past life. As we worked through that process, I was told that's that life. I was like, oh yeah, it's a past life. And then I was like, no, it's happening now. So there is a little bit of like I don't, you're like, what? So I'm like, well, that life showed up because you're going through something, was very specific. So you can heal this past life, this parallel life. It's in the subconscious mind. This is your soul, the subconscious. It's all like one and the same. And I'm just sharing my perception at this time, because I know there's so much more. This this is a huge conversation. We can spend like hours, and I would love to do that. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I love to just go in deep and talk about this. But it's like your subconscious mind brought this life, because the clients will say, well, I'm making this up. I'm like, yeah, in a way, but it's coming from somewhere. It's coming from you. I'm not saying it. You're saying it. That's why I love this work with the hypnosis, because I'm asking questions and my clients are answering it. So it's not me. I'm holding the space. I'm asking, but you're coming up with your own answers, which is your subconscious, which is your soul. So as you clear as much as possible and transform that, you're helping yourself, and again, this past life or this parallel life. So I don't see it as a huge disconnect. I think of it as like this one big weave. There's a lot of thread, like a lot of it's not a complicated weave, but there's lots of different threads and directions. But I do feel that what we do has so much more power than we realize. So, and the subconscious mind has a lot. Like with Dr. Bruce Lipton, I actually had the honor of studying with him in New Mexico. And it was really fascinating to hear his teachings and his perspective, because it's like this quantum field. And so we, here we are creating a quantum field. Everybody who's listening suddenly becomes in that quantum field. But if you're not ready, if you're not in, let's say, the same frequency, the same alignment, you're going to say, I'm not going to listen to that, or it won't even show up for you. So that's the whole thing about the subconscious mind. We plant these seeds, and, I had like a client who's like, she's so funny. She's like, all the men, she wants to meet someone. She's like, but all the men I'm meeting are like fat and broke, right? Because that was her belief, that all the men now, because she was divorced, all the leftover men is what she would say, are fat and broke. I'm like, well, that's not true, because I happen to know my husband has, like, I know lots of men who are divorced and they're not fat and broke, right? But that's what she believed, and even subconsciously was showing her that. So that's all she was seeing, right? So as we planted the seed that there's many available men, she was like, oh my God. She was like, what am I going to do now? I'm like, just take a deep breath, But it was fun. It's fun to see that transformation going back to the subconscious, because then it's like, okay, it's safe for me to believe that I can, it's not just all men are fat and broke. It's like, oh, it's safe for me to be open to this new relationship and to see there's people available, and also to be vulnerable and put myself out there. And then we plant that seed in the subconscious, and then who knows how many of her parallel lives are benefiting from this. And maybe her issue came from a past life, because I've had that experience with my own body where certain things like, even with having the type 1 diabetes, I'm like, this could be something from a past life. And my soul chose to have this experience in this current life. So I use all my tools to keep myself as happy and healthy as possible. And maybe I am affecting a parallel life that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, there's so much mystery in this web of life that we can just, it's hard to wrap our mind around it, right? And then the deeper you go, the deeper it gets. So I don't feel like there is a point that we're going to say, oh, I know it. It's very clear, at least that's not my experience.
Yeah.
No, but it is fascinating. It is very interesting and fascinating. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, like the power of what we believe. And I sometimes wonder, do we even believe things see things that we don't believe? Not that they're not there, right? As you were saying about, if you believe that's the only thing out there, that's all you're going to see. Right. And it's just what it takes is shifting that perspective and what you believe to see different. Yes. And that's fascinating, right? The power of our mind. So as we come into the end, Judie, is there anything that we didn't talk about or something you want to leave our clients with?
Let me just tune in and see what wants to come through. Mm. So about like a few days ago, I shared a video like of a message. I do channel the messages at times, and I just keep on getting this nudge, and then I share the message, and I just heard it again. And it's, it's the Nike's old slogan, just do it. And it has been coming through so strongly. And I think it does tie in very well with our conversation that we had, is that if there is something that you have this nudge, you have this calling, you have this pull, listen to it. Listen. And yes, the fear or the doubts or the critic, whatever, the imposter syndrome, be friend, like Thich Nhat Hanh says, invite them in for a cup of tea, but you don't have to live with them. Say, okay, oh yeah, here you are. I have fear. That's right. Thank you. I see you, but I'm going to do it anyway. So if there is something that feels a little out of your comfort zone, a little scary, take a deep breath, do whatever practice, like rooting, ground and practice. And then I invite you, I say yes, just say yes, especially as we enter the summer solstice, the summer seasons, but really the rest of the year, the rest of your life. If something is calling to you, take a chance, say yes, just do it. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but I think it's something, it's like a reminder that we need to hear that you're going to be okay. So just do it though, because you want to, it's just going to lead to so much, I think, satisfaction.
What a beautiful way to end this potent conversation. Thank you so much, Judie, for being here, sharing your wisdom and bright light. And I'd love for you to tell the listeners where they can find you and connect with you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It was such a beautiful honor. It's my honor and privilege to share space with you. So I really appreciate you both. And my website is judiehurtado.com. I post a lot on Instagram. I'm Judie Hurtado Mystic on Instagram. And I also send out like a magical newsletter. So if anybody wants to receive that, I will talk about different astrological aspects. I'll do spur of the moment oracle card readings or blessings, or just like, sending healing energy. And you could just send me an email to receive that. And my email is judy@judiehurtado.com.
Thank you, Judy. I will put that information in our show notes. And thank you, everybody, for being here, joining us, listening to us. We appreciate you, and we would love your comments and questions. So have them come in and just let us know what topics you want us to explore more, and we love to hear from you.
I just want to say one last thing, please. I just remembered, if you as you're listening, maybe we put that in the show notes, drink some water, because as you're listening, as I said, Reiki Master, I'm a shamanic practitioner. I infuse everything that I do with healing energy. I can't turn it off. You automatically get it. So drinking water can help just the energy integrate and flow. And if anybody has any questions, please reach out, because I know sometimes things may come up as they listen to this podcast. So I am 100% available and would love to connect with anyone if they had any, who knows, interesting experiences as they listen to this podcast. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much again. Thank you to all listeners, and have a beautiful, blessed day.